have also imposed a 25% tariff on foreign aluminum, copper, lumber, and steel. Tariffs are about making America rich again and making America great again, and it's happening, and it will happen rather quickly.
If you're planning to fly to the U.S. this summer, you might notice fewer flight options. New data shows a massive drop in demand for air travel between Canada and the U.S., forcing airlines to cut seats and scale back routes.
There was nobody there. There was nobody in my row. It was really shocking. I've never been on a flight like that.
The front doors to America are closing, not with a whisper, but with the deafening silence of empty terminals. Once the proud gateways of U.S. power and culture international airports are turning into ghost towns. Traffic has collapsed by an unprecedented 70 to 80%, leaving concourses that once symbolized global connection reduced to echoing halls of abandonment. Meanwhile, the world isn't standing still. 11 brand new international hubs are rising across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, pulling not only flights, but prestige revenue and influence away from the United States. For an economy built on openness, the cost is staggering. Washington now faces the prospect of losing $12.5 billion in 2025 alone, as international visitors vanish. And the forecasts only deepen. The anxiety arrivals are projected to fall by another 9.4%, stripping nearly $9 billion in consumer spending from local businesses and entire regional economies. So the question is no longer just about tourism, it's about America's place in the global system. If the world's travelers no longer see the U.S. as their destination, what does that say about the nation's standing in the 21st century? Before we dive in, tap that like button. It tells YouTube this content matters and helps more people find the story. And nowhere is this collapse felt more painfully than in Portland. Once celebrated as a green welcoming gateway to the Pacific Northwest, the airport has now become a symbol of abandonment. International traffic has plunged by 73%, forcing multiple gates to close some permanently, others indefinitely. The airlines that once carried Portland's reputation abroad are gone. Lufthansa, British Airways, and Scandinavian Airlines have shifted their entire operations north to Vancouver, leaving Portland isolated from the global map. Even the interest in travel itself has withered. Requests for flight information have dropped by 81%, fueled by traveler concerns over safety delays and the growing perception that Portland is no longer a reliable entry point into America. And it isn't only about passengers. Cargo operations, once a lifeline for Oregon's exports, have quietly followed the exodus, rerouting through Seattle and Vancouver cities seen as more trustworthy and better connected. What was once a source of regional pride has been downgraded to a no-go zone in the eyes of both airlines and travelers. If you've made it this far, consider subscribing. It's how we keep uncovering what others won't say. If Portland shows how quickly a regional hub can collapse, the Northeast demonstrates that even America's most vital arteries are not immune. Newark, once a powerhouse linking New York to the Middle East and Europe, has seen international traffic fall by 68%. Emirates has cut its services, while Virgin Atlantic and Swiss have rerouted flights elsewhere, leaving fewer connections and fewer choices for passengers. What remains is hardly appealing delays and security bottlenecks that can stretch past 2 hours, turning what used to be a gateway into a nightmare. Boston has fared little better. International arrivals there are down 59%, but the pain goes beyond empty terminals. The city's academic lifeline, its foreign students, has thinned as visa delays discourage families from sending their children to study in Massachusetts. Airlines that once filled Boston's skies, Aer Lingus, Air France, Virgin Atlantic, have all trimmed their schedules. The ripple effect is clear on the ground. Hotels in Cambridge and Back Bay are running at barely half capacity, a devastating blow for an economy built on education and international tourism. From the Northeast to the southern edge of the country, the story only grows darker. Miami, once the beating heart of U.S. connections to Latin America and Europe, has seen its lifeblood drained away. International traffic from Latin America has collapsed by 64%, with multiple carriers cutting routes entirely. For travelers from Brazil, Argentina, or Colombia, the wait time for a U.S. visa now stretches beyond 6 months, an eternity in the travel industry. Frustrated, many are choosing Europe instead, redirecting both leisure and business traffic away from American soil. The ripple is brutal. Hotels along Miami Beach cite half-empty restaurants, see fewer foreign customers, and cruise operators warn of lasting declines. Meanwhile, in Phoenix, a city that once branded itself as an emerging global hub for both tourism and business, the fall has been equally steep. International arrivals are down 62%, with Lufthansa and British Airways slashing service to the desert state. What may seem like a local inconvenience quickly turns systemic. The tourism triangle of Arizona, Utah, and Nevada, built on global visitors flying through Phoenix, now struggles to fill tours, hotels, and attractions. Without those flights, the desert economy feels more isolated than ever, a reminder that when the planes leave, prosperity leaves with them. If Miami and Phoenix revealed the collapse of tourism, Dallas and Seattle show how deeply the damage cuts into America's economic core. Dallas-Fort Worth, a hub not only for travelers, but also for global energy executives and manufacturing shipments, has seen international arrivals fall by 57%. Major carriers from Asia and the Middle East have pulled back routes, leaving fewer direct links to critical partners. The shock has extended beyond passenger travel. FedEx and UPS, once reliant on DFW for international transits, are shifting their operations to more efficient gateways abroad. For Texas, a state that built its economy on connectivity, the loss of global reach is more than symbolic. It strikes at the foundation of energy trade and logistics. Further north, Seattle tells a parallel story. Long celebrated as America's window to the Pacific, its ties to Asia have been severed with alarming speed. Passenger traffic from Asia is down 69%, and arrivals from Europe have fallen 54%. All Nippon Airways has eliminated its Tokyo route, while British Airways has sharply reduced service. The consequences ripple far beyond the airport. Downtown hotels now operate at just 45% occupancy, while restaurants and tech conferences, once filled with overseas visitors, struggle to fill seats. For a city that branded itself as a global hub of innovation and commerce, the silence of its airport is nothing short of devastating. If Dallas and Seattle expose the economic fallout, Washington Dulles reveals something more damaging: the erosion of America's diplomatic reach. Even the capital of the United States, the city that once welcomed presidents, prime ministers, and foreign dignitaries with ease, is now caught in the same downward spiral. International traffic has plunged 65% since 2023, with the sharpest declines from Europe, America's closest allies. The airline pullback underscores the shift. Virgin Atlantic and Air France have reduced frequencies, while Lufthansa has shifted to hubs in Frankfurt and Munich, leaving Washington with diminished prestige as a transatlantic anchor. For visiting delegations, this means fewer options, longer layovers, and the unmistakable signal that Washington is no longer the smooth gateway to power it once was. The consequences ripple quickly. Hotels that once thrived on embassy events and global summits now face record vacancy, while restaurants and service firms tied to diplomatic traffic struggle to survive. More than lost revenue. The symbolism cuts deeper. Each empty concourse at Dulles quietly suggests that access to America's capital, once effortless, is now uncertain, and with it, the aura of U.S. leadership is beginning to fade. If Washington's struggles mark a diplomatic setback, the crisis at Los Angeles and New York tells a far more haunting story: the unraveling of America's global image itself. For decades, LAX and JFK were more than just airports. They were icons of aspiration, the gateways that defined the first impressions of millions. Los Angeles was the stage where dreamers arrived, chasing Hollywood lights, while New York offered the towering promise of Wall Street and Broadway. Together, they projected the image of a nation at the center of global culture, commerce, and ambition. Today, those same gateways stand eerily hollow, their silence louder than any protest. At LAX, international traffic has plunged 71%. Terminals that once overflowed with directors, musicians, and executives arriving for premieres, concerts, and global trade shows now operate at a fraction of their capacity. Singapore Airlines has cut nearly 40% of its flights, while Cathay Pacific has heavily trimmed its schedule, severing vital bridges to Asia's entertainment and financial centers. Beyond numbers, the symbolism is stark. Los Angeles, the city that once exported culture to every corner of the globe, now finds itself less accessible to the very audiences it seeks to reach. Even film festivals and global media expos report difficulties attracting international participants, citing the hassle and uncertainty of traveling through LAX. JFK tells an even grimmer tale. International arrivals there have collapsed by a staggering 78%, the sharpest decline in American aviation history. Emirates has slashed 60% of its services, while British Airways has reduced much of its London frequency, leaving entire wings of the airport in a state of abandonment. For decades, JFK was the ultimate symbol of America's openness. the airport that never slept with flights touching down from every continent every hour. Now, its once bustling international concourses feel more like vast, empty monuments to a past era of U.S. dominance. The absence is not only visible, it is psychological. For travelers around the world, the first step onto American soil no longer begins in New York. And that shift chips away at the mythology that has long fueled America's soft power. While U.S. airports sink into silence, Canada and other global hubs are seizing the space Washington once dominated. Canadian travelers, once a steady stream into American cities, are now avoiding the U.S. altogether. Bookings have dropped by more than 70% as families opt for South America or Europe instead. Florida's beaches and Phoenix's resorts, long favorites of Canadians, are being swapped for the Dominican Republic, Mexico, and Jamaica. The shift isn't just in the skies. 500,000 cross-border car trips vanished in a single month, marking the lowest level since 2022. For border towns and tourist states, this isn't a seasonal dip, it's a warning siren. The front doors to America, once symbols of openness and strength, now stand as ghost towns. And the final question is unavoidable: can the United States still claim to be the world's central hub, or has that role already passed to others for good? And that's where we'll leave it. The decline of America's airports isn't only about empty terminals, it's about a nation losing its position at the crossroads of the world. If Canada, Europe, and Asia are quietly replacing the U.S. in global travel and commerce, what comes next? Could America rebuild its gateways, or are we witnessing the start of a permanent shift in power? Thanks for watching, and if this resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Every click fuels the truth.